A few things to know before you fly WestJet to Nashville. You don't need cowboy boots to have a great time in Nashville. You don't need a cowboy hat either. You don't even need to be a country music fan. To have a great time in Nashville, you just need to go to Nashville. WestJet can certainly help with that, with great low WestJet fares nonstop from Calgary to Nashville. Visit WestJet.com or call your travel agent.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another Restoration. This is Lori Smith. I'm glad to be here, and good morning. It is Friday morning, May the 26th, 7 o'clock here in the morning. I'm just waking up, having a coffee, and glad to be here. We're just looking at a morning reflection, just staying on my healing journey. That's sort of what this is about. So hopefully, you're getting something out of this if you're a survivor of abuse and you're just working on your healing journey. Hopefully you'll find this information helpful. It helps keep me on my healing journey. Really, that's why I'm doing these shows. And so just so that I'll do the work instead of putting it off and actually continue working on things. So that's what we're doing. And so if you're listening and you're a survivor, you want to make sure you're safe enough to listen in the first place by doing a safety check. And just to make sure that you're safe enough that you're not going to, if you listen to this or anything like this, that you're not going to be triggered by it, your own past abuse issues, and then, kind of go backwards in your healing journey. You really don't want that. So learn how to keep yourself safe, and you can get that information from ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, a Morris Center program, and that's, they have a Survivor to Thriver workbook, and it's awesome. The whole workbook's awesome. But they have a chapter in there, the very first chapter is called Safety First, and it used to be, I don't know what it is now, but I read it, a few years ago, quite a few years ago actually, and but it's 60 pages long. So you want to learn how to keep yourself safe, and so don't listen to this show unless you're absolutely positive that it's not going to trigger you. And then if you're just anybody else listening, just listen at your own discretion, because the topics of abuse and the situations that adult survivors of child abuse, of any type of abuse actually they have to go through, can be kind of disturbing. So the information, you want to make sure that you're okay to listen, and we'll get right into this. We're just looking at HAVOCA mainly, looking at HAVOCA's website. That's Help for Adult Victims of Child Abuse. They have some very interesting articles on their website. You can go there, havoca.org, HAVOCA, and we're looking at feelings. But how am I doing this morning? Well, I just woke up. So I just missed two of my alarms, slept through 2 alarms, and bear with me. And I've only been up for a few minutes, so just trying to have a drink of coffee and sort of wake up here. These shows, this is my healing journey, so, I know where we left off, and I know what we were working on, because I through the week am kind of looking at these things and working on them myself. So we'll just pick up where we left off here. But how am I feeling this morning? I just woke up, so I haven't had any time to think about how I'm feeling this morning. Usually I have about an hour or so to think about it, because I usually get up around 6, but this morning I missed my alarms, 2 of them, and so I feel actually pretty good. This week was pretty good. It was not a bad week. I was busy, actually very busy, so I didn't have a lot of time to do any extra work. Like, I didn't have time to work in my workbook that I'm working on right now, which is that Dr. Danby Allender's The Wounded Heart workbooks for healing, hope for adult victims of childhood sexual abuse. So I didn't do any work in that this week because I kind of ran out of time. And so I plan on doing that this weekend, doing some work in there, because it's a good book and a good workbook. I mean, it's very helpful for me. I don't know if it'll help anybody else out, but I'm finding it very useful. And otherwise, I'm feeling pretty good, a little bit tired, but it's Friday, and so that's good. But how am I feeling this morning as far as, emotions or feelings or, any particular things that I need to work on? Just had a little bit of just sort of a distressing situation this week, and I'm not going to go into any real details, but it just sort of, it was a boundary issue. I just felt that my boundaries were being a little bit crossed there. And so I'm glad that my boundaries are in check, because survivors of abuse really, your boundaries can be, they don't always necessarily be messed up, but it depends on the type of abuse and the seriousness of the abuse, and also the length of the abuse, I think, and whether or not you've actually got any help with it or not. So boundary work for me was a huge issue. I actually did boundary work way back. I would say when I first started doing Blog Talk Radio here back in like 2009, 2010, 2011, probably during those 2 years, I had done a lot of work on boundary work. And so my boundaries are really set, really quite solid. And I know when something is crossed my boundary because it'll make me uncomfortable, and all of a sudden I'm feeling that someone is. It's not that someone's trying to do something to me or hurt me. It's just that my boundaries have been crossed. And it's really important to get that information and know how to even realize if your boundaries are being, kind of not strong enough to sort of help keep you safe or keep you comfortable in any kind of relationship, right? So I'm glad that kind of was good. I was glad to see that because, I used to be, because I grew up abused, my boundaries, there was no boundaries. So people were, allowed to do whatever they wanted to be. And I really couldn't do anything about it. Obviously, as a child, being abused, there's not much you can do. It's kind of, they're going to cross your physical boundaries, your emotional boundaries, psychological boundaries, your mental well-being, everything. Everything is crossed in a dysfunctional, abusive home. So I'm glad that as an adult that I've got my boundaries pretty set. My problem is that my boundary walls are almost too strong, so I have a tendency to push people out or push people away that I think are trying, or that not trying to cross my boundaries, but just if they do, I almost become a little bit too diligent and vigilant and kind of, chase people off. But it's really a self-protection. And just, when I feel uncomfortable about something, you have to tell people, if someone in a relationship in any type of relationship is causing you to feel uncomfortable, you have the right to tell them that it's making you uncomfortable. And so that's good. I'm glad that my boundaries are holding. That's very good. I'm very happy about that. Otherwise, as far as the rest of the week went, I'm feeling pretty good. Not too bad. I didn't have too many problems with flashbacks this week. No real, things like that going on. So it's been a pretty good week overall. So we'll get into this. I want to look at this Avoca Feelings article that we're looking at here. And it's a very lengthy article, actually. You can go to their website, havoca.org, and it's under Information for Survivors tab. And then you'll see it on the left-hand side of the page. There's a whole lot of columns there, and they've got all this information there. One of the sections is called Feelings, and that's what we're looking at. So I'm just reading right from their stuff here, and then I just talk about it. But I'll pick up where we left off here. You can go back and listen to Monday's show just to see where we left off, because I don't want to repeat that. But what they say here is, this is we're just picking up where we left off. They said, thinking, quote unquote, unless we can hear each other singing and crying, unless we can comfort each other's failures and cheer each other's victories, we are missing out on the best that life has to offer. The only real action takes place on the bridge between people, author unknown. So they're saying your thinking grows up. Many of the features of your mental set originated in your childhood before you developed the ability to think as you do now, abstractly. So abstract thinking, they said, begins to develop in adolescence and really comes into its own in adulthood. The way you thought as a child is very different from how you think now. And if you want to learn more about this, read a book on cognitive development. And they said here, I prefer to make the point by illustration. And they said, suppose that I made the following rude remark to you, quote unquote, you're nothing but a stupid jerk. At your current age, you might get angry or annoyed with me, but you would be able to figure out that if I call you a jerk, it doesn't make you one. And you're able to understand that you are not a jerk because I say no, or because I say so, that I'm a rude person and that is my problem, not yours. So being able to think through that kind of situation requires an ability to reason abstractly. And they said here, you did not have that ability when you were a small child. So imagine that you were only 5 years old. Imagine that I said the same rude comment to you. You are nothing but a stupid jerk. Being a small child and lacking the ability to reason through this kind of message, you would be apt to believe it and take it completely to heart. And they said here, that's really quite interesting, because children don't have, they don't think, like, they're not able to reason around things, and somebody says something to a small child, they're gonna believe it. You know what I mean? And this is sad, but this is true, because everybody's had some sort of wounding in childhood from somebody, whether it's a teacher or another classmate, or even if it's not in the home. Even if we weren't abused, if people weren't abused in their own homes, you're gonna come across somebody, at some point in your childhood who's done something or said something that's hurt us. You know what I mean? Because this is life, right? Horrible. So childhood is a time of mental vulnerability, because children lack the abstract reasoning ability of adolescents and adults. So adolescence is the transition period. So some nuisance, faulty beliefs about ourselves, others in the world, will become established during our childhood years before the onset of the ability to reason as an adult. So once established, these thinking patterns will not necessarily fall away as our ability to think grows up. Such is the staying power of habits. So as we pass through our teen years, developing abstract reasoning skills, no one takes us aside for a time out to check out the degree of mental pollution acquired during our mentally vulnerable childhood years. So that's interesting what they had to say there. Some of the troublesome thinking patterns and faulty beliefs of childhood will persist in even extremely intelligent people. So they said here, the good news is that it is never too late to begin the task of mental housekeeping and helping your thinking to grow up. That's really quite interesting. Well, yeah. It's just horrible. The stuff that we hear and see as a child and witness. My story is what it is, but everyone's got their own story. You know what I mean? And children, witnessing, being forced to witness, or horrible, violent acts, in their homes or around them someplace. And then, if they're being physically abused, emotionally abused, psychologically abused, verbally battered, right? This stuff takes a toll, because children don't know how to cope. They don't know how to deal with this stuff. So when a child's world is in chaos, you just know that the thought patterns and the built-in systems of thinking and ways of thinking and dealing with things are going to be really twisted. And so that's why, so many people have so many problems. You think about it, there's no perfect situation. We all know that, as a survivor of abuse, I know that. I had friends who came from good homes that I would consider to be good homes. But I know that their homes weren't perfect, because there is no perfect situation. But, when people say that and say, oh, well, no one's home was perfect and no one's childhood was perfect, it's like, that always makes me laugh. Because when people are saying that to you, they're trying to get you to drop to sort of get over your abuse. You just get over it, because everybody's had a hard childhood. Everybody's suffered in their life. And everybody's just been mistreated. Well, yeah, to a certain extent, but not to the same extent. So, it's real easy to get to tell somebody that when you're coming from a home where there was at least one loving, caring parent or parental figure in the home, who actually really did make a difference in that child's world. And then not only that, but there wasn't any real violence around, and it was just a few problems, Kids can kind of overcome that stuff, But when you're coming from a situation where both of your parents are abusive, they're abusing each other possibly, and abusing you or the children in the home, however many there are, and there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of sexual violence, there's a lot of verbal abuse, psychological abuse going on. It's going to be really a lot harder for that child to cope and to make it in that. And then if they do make it as an adult, they're going to have to get help, because all the thinking processes are going to be twisted, completely. And unless they reach out and get some help, they're going to continue on in those patterns, which are very destructive. And not even if it's not, that they can't hold a job down, or they're drug users, or into criminal activity, or just can't pull it together, or suicidal, whatever these issues are, that these poor survivors of abuse have to try to deal with as adults, right? they're seriously, even if they're not that messed up and they can still hold a job down and they can still do things, they're still going to be doing things that are going to be a bit destructive in their life for, self-sabotage type stuff, which they may not even realize they were doing. I didn't realize I was doing self-sabotage stuff until I had a life coach point it out to me, because I didn't realize that was one of my behaviors. And I had a situation come up where I've talked about it here before on Blog Talk Radio. But, this life coach was like, well, you can keep running if you want to, And I was like, I never saw it like that. She goes, yeah. She goes, oh, yeah, you can keep running if you want to. Because I told this life coach, I said, I'm just upset, and I told her why. And I said, I was abused horrifically as a child. And this situation has just made this, just brought this out. And now I'm really upset. And it was a situation at work, right, years ago. And she's, I said, I don't even think I can go back there, And she's like, because she was a life coach for this job that I was working at, this kind of a pretty good job that I had there. And she's like, you can keep running if you want to. As somebody who's suffered abuse as a child, your instincts are going to want to be to run. And even as an adult, you're still running, right? She goes, well, you can face it, and you can get your needs met. You can say your piece, confront the issue, confront the situation, and get your needs met, maybe for the first time in your lifetime. Or you can keep running. It's up to you. That was so interesting to find out that, because I had never saw that situation in my life that I was running. But actually, I was running from everything. I ran from relationships. I ran from any situation that made me feel uncomfortable, or even resembled how it made me feel as a child. So instead of getting my needs met, I just run as an adult. So, and that's not running out of the room crying or anything like that. It's like cutting everything out, shutting things down, shutting people off, getting rid of situations, quitting jobs, so that I can protect myself. It's the same thing as running. I ran to Canada from the States, because I'm a dual citizen. So years ago I ran away 2,000 miles from my abusive past, right? And thinking that I could get away from it, right? So these are some of the things that can be very damaging, even if it's not something like drug use or, something like that, or something, like criminal activity or whatever. Excuse me. Just these things like self-sabotage. I mean, that's terrible. That's horrible. So I've had to go through and actually do this huge, massive amount of work to make sure, that my needs are being met, and that I'm doing what I need to do to grow and mature, as an adult, and get through this stuff, because this never should have happened, but it did. If you're, most people who listen to this show are survivors of abuse, right? And no, it shouldn't have happened. It's not our fault. And yet we got to pick up the pieces. We got to try to make it work. And most people are not interested in helping out. They don't, really honestly, the world doesn't care, right? The world doesn't care if we ruin our lives. They won't care. So why would we want to ruin our lives as adults after coming through, whatever abuse that we've come through, right? Now that's horrible. So, right, they're talking about, such a staying power of habits, right? Once established, these thinking patterns will not necessarily fall away as our ability to think grows up. They said that's just so true, right? We have to learn how to think differently. That's what happened when I started my healing journey, Like I really had to start looking at things, I had to start feeling different, allowing myself to feel differently about myself and about my life, because, I had just continued on in these thought patterns and thought processes that I had kept with me for so long, that I saw myself in a certain way. And that was that I was useless, because see, this is what they're saying here. If they said, if someone said to you as a child that you're nothing but whatever, quote unquote, you're just this or you're just that, right? At that age, when you're little, you might believe it. But when you get older, if somebody said that to you, you'd just be looking at them like, well, you're rude, and you wouldn't believe that. If somebody said, oh, you're this or you're that to me now, I'd just be like, whatever, get out of my face. You're rude. Right? I wouldn't believe it necessarily or take it on. I'd just be like, well, I'd probably call them a name back too. That's just how I am. But I don't take that kind of stuff from anybody. So, as a child, yeah, we're forced to take that stuff. And what do we do with it? We believe it. Most likely. You know? So then as a teen, we're no one's done the little check marks to say, "Oh, hey, back, here's a little chart, and back when you were, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you know, uh, you were called all of these names, and this is what happened, and go through that with us and say these are not true, don't believe it, it was a lie, it was, those things were horrible things that never should have been said to you, they're not true, right? So then as a teen, well, we're trying to deal with this because this trying to learn how to be this really to move from childhood to or young adulthood, right? And that's a hard time, And then if we've been abused or we're being abused in our teen years, it just makes it that much worse because these things then get reinforced, right? That we're this and we're that and we're no good or we're this and we're that, So then as an adult, you're sitting around and you got to try to, So I had to start seeing things differently. I know when I started my healing journey, that's exactly what I did. I took a look at the abuse in my home, and instead of just looking at it from a victim attitude as I always had, I looked at the whole picture. Why was my mom doing what she did? Why did my dad do what he did? Why did my siblings react the way that they did? And what did they do then because of the abuse to ruin their lives? And was, how much of the damage done really was their response? I mean, whose responsibility was this? A lot of people blame said my brothers were just losers and they were just drug users and people would run my brothers down. And it hurt my feelings because my brothers, the most of them are dead actually. And it would hurt my feelings because I loved my brothers very much and I knew what they went through. And so that's why, when I wrote my books, it wasn't about making money. It was really so that people would know what happened to my brothers. Because nobody was going to tell the truth. Nobody was going to be honest. Nobody was going to say, oh, they weren't losers. They weren't these losers that everybody wants to believe that they were because of their lifestyle and the way that they lived and what they did, They weren't losers. They were abused as children horrifically. And they didn't deserve that. Neither did I, right? So I had to start looking at things as a third party, so that I could get the big picture and take a look at what happened and what destroyed our family, really. And that's horrific, you know what I mean? None of us should, should have to be put through that. And unfortunately, the world says, well, it happens. It's too bad for you, right? And, my heart really breaks, really, for people, for survivors of abuse, because none of us should have been treated like that. None of us, not one of us should have been abused ever. That includes my parents. My mom was abused as a child, horrifically, by her mother. My dad was abused as a child by his parents. So see, none of it's excusable. You can't excuse it away and say, oh, they just didn't have the coping skills, or, oh, they just didn't know what they were doing. Oh, they knew what they were doing. They didn't have the coping skills, but they knew what they were doing. Abusers do know what they're doing. When they're abusing whoever they're abusing, abusers are completely in control, and that's why they're doing it, And it's a horrible situation, and it never should have happened, But but then after that, then we have to say, okay, well, then how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this as an adult? I'm going to have to get in touch with this stuff. So that's why they're talking about this feeling stuff. Because this stuff is, as a child, I had to, I did grow up believing a lot of the things. Not all of them, because some of the names that my mom especially used to call me, I knew that I was none of those things. But the other stuff that could be believable, like, oh, I'm just worthless. I'm a rape child. I'm worthless. She didn't want me in the first place. This kind of stuff sticks with me because I know it's true. That's harsh. But, my world says, I am worth it. I'm worthy. I was born. I made it. I survived the incubator. I was born really sick and preemie and everything. So I actually survived. I had my own nurses and everything. I made it, So, yeah, my mom didn't want me. Whatever. My dad didn't care about any of his children that were born, ever. So, yeah, as an adult, I have to sit back and I have to say, I was put here for a purpose, for a reason. It certainly wasn't to be abused, you know. And so I do deserve to be here. I do count. My voice does matter. And, then I have to be good to myself and I have to try to be good to others around me, right? And that's my mission. That's my goal, I guess, is to grow and to grow and to continue to heal, But these things are very, very difficult for people, and I know that. And I know, so many of us have been through so many really just horrible, miserable things, And it's just important to get help, right? So we'll pick up the rest of this article on Monday. The next section would be your mental set and your behavior, and it's quite interesting. So we'll look at that on Monday. So we'll just move along here. I want to look at positive reinforcement. What am I doing right? What are you doing right in your healing journey, in your walk? Instead of looking at the negatives all the time, we know it's okay to check ourselves against the negatives, like what we're not getting done or what we're not doing, because we do need to know that. But it's also good to be positive, and look at what we're doing right, instead of always being hard on ourselves or down on ourselves because, I didn't accomplish this or I didn't do that, so then I reinforces that I am a loser and I can't do anything right, which isn't true, because you know what? I got up every day this morning and I put one foot on the ground and then I put the other foot on the ground. And then I got up and I was good to myself during the day, and I didn't self-injure or self-sabotage. I was good to myself, and then I was good to people around me, so I can say, it was a good week, right? And that's positive instead of being negative. There are some things I didn't get done this week, but that's all right. They weren't a crisis situation. I can do them next week. And so, yeah, I'm getting up. I'm doing the things I need to do to take care of myself, getting things done little by little. Some things get put off. I'm not going to be hard on myself, If some things get put off, that's fine, because I'm doing the best that I can. And so, yeah, just looking at the positives, That's important, to look at the positives in your life, not just the negatives. Self-care, as far as what I'm doing physically, spiritually, emotionally, really, just to take care of the whole self, right? And they've got lots of information if you want to look at those. There's a bunch of stuff on a website called Irving Studios. It's a child abuse survivor monument. This guy's out of Canada, but he's a survivor of abuse, and he's now a psychotherapist, and he's a therapist. He's a counselor. He's really got a great website there. Check it out, Child Abuse Survivor Monument. And he built this monument, and people could send in their handprints, and I actually did that. That's pretty awesome. So they put all these survivors' handprints, artwork and stuff in this monument thing, and it's this Child Abuse Survivor Monument. It's in Ottawa, Canada, and it's awesome, and I'd love to go there, and I'd love to see it. I've seen it on the web, but you can check his stuff out, irvingstudios.com, because he's a sculptor, he's a therapist, he's a psychotherapist. He knows, he's been there, right? And so if you're struggling and you need some coping lists or things like that, or weekly activities to take care of yourself, things like that, he's got great lists there. And he says then you got to make your own list, but he'll give you ideas. And he's got some really great stuff there, so I hope you'll go check that out. Irving Studios, IRVIRNG, irvingstudios.com, or .com, and then or you can go to Child Abuse Survivor Monument, and just type that in there, and it'll come up, and you can find his Survivor tab. He's got like a Survivor tab, and you can look under there for survivor, adult survivor information. And he also has some great coping lists and whatnot, which are really, really good. Like physical boundaries, like you can do things to help yourself. Like if you're struggling and you're having like flashbacks or a bit of trouble breathing or just whatever the issue is, you can do some physical boundary work, and to create these physical boundaries, which then help you to feel safe, to feel protected, to feel strong, right? And so I think that's really awesome. We have about a minute left here. And how about let's do motivational or some sort of a quote. I love these quotes from Brainy Quote. Brainy, just like the word brain, brainy. BrainyQuote.com. And how about this one for Friday? Life is a song, sing it. Life is a game, play it. Life is a challenge, meet it. Life is a dream, realize it. Life is a sacrifice, offer it. Life is love, enjoy it. That's from Sai Baba. That's awesome. That's from BrainyQuote.com. So have a great weekend, everybody. Take care of yourself. If you're struggling and you're having a hard time, you make sure you reach out and you get some help. Do not struggle on your own. Do not suffer on your own. I mean, you get to the point where you can't do it and you don't know how you're gonna cope for another day. I've been there. You call a crisis line. You do whatever you have to do, but you keep yourself safe. And you meet me back here on Monday morning. Take care, everybody. I wish you a really wonderful weekend. Be good to yourself. Be kind to yourself. And enjoy some moments of your day. And like I said, take care of yourself. Be really, really good to yourself. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.